Hello, everyone, and welcome to Maker's Place and Whale Artist Fireside Chat with actor, poet, creative, philanthropist, and NFT enthusiast David Bianchi, who joins us to discuss his tokenized film, Break the Bars, a raw and passionate exploration of the lives of inner city youth. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, Nightmare. Thanks for taking the time, and shout out to Maker's Place and the Whale community for participating in this conversation. I'm happy to get the word out and inspire some people along the way.
Definitely, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Just getting that into the intro was difficult. You're so multifaceted. There's so much that you touch on that creative was probably the best word that I could use to fit within the confines of the 140 characters on Twitter. For those that may not have exposure or may not know, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And and you hit it right on the head. It's like I consider myself literally a multidisciplinary artist. I'm an actor, independent filmmaker, but I'm an artist first. And I'm also globally known as a spoken word poet, but I'm a screenwriter, film producer, and also film director. I've done fine art exhibits in Scottsdale, Tempe. I've got a congratulatory letter from the mayor at one point for my artistic works, fine art in Los Angeles. So I'm an artist first, no matter what. But I entered the NFT space in March 2021, and I minted the world's first award-winning spoken word film as an NFT. It was a project called I Can't Breathe, which was my soliloquy to the death of Mr. Floyd in the largest civil rights movement in global history. And that project ended up minting on another platform that allowed for 250 megabytes on chain. So I entered that space and I was like, okay, this is how I want to do it. And it ended up successfully auctioning to the metaverse. And in an unprecedented move, I donated 100% of those proceeds to the George Floyd Memorial Foundation. And that was really the springboard of that led up to where we are now. And the art genre that we're talking about today is spinema, spinning cinema through spoken word, or spoken word cinema for short. And that's a genre that I created, that I've trademarked. And to give you some background, for the better of almost 20 years, I've been producing experimental short films told entirely in poetry that are socially conscious in their themes. And so I've been doing this for so long, just forging my knife and forging the blade. And over the course of 2 decades, I've done so many of these out of my own pocket, never for profit. It was just always something that I did to create artivism, to create a higher conversation about socially conscious issues. Because at heart, I'm also an activist. And so I've now minted 2 of them. My previous one was a piece with Grammy winner and iconic actor Malcolm Jamal Warner called "You Can't Hear Me," which is an injustice piece. And so now we're at the third, and we're talking about the third one today called "Break the Bars," which you gave a great synopsis of. What's unique about this one is this is the first Spinema NFT film that I've minted that I've actually directed. And also my second one was also acquired by metaverse. And some very sophisticated collectors have acquired my works, including, Mondoir, Pranksy, Canose Ventures, some very, very influential people. I've been very, very grateful to have collected my works. And yeah, there's some of my works as an actor. I've probably got over 100 professional film and television credits. I'm a member of the Producers Guild of America as a filmmaker, and I'm also a member of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. In fact, that article on Forbes that you guys are seeing there, that Forbes article is actually related to my Genesis drop. That sort of, really blew the roof off in terms of my NFT work. So my mission, and to wrap up the thought, is to use NFTs for change, use NFTs for the greater good. I'm not necessarily the guy that's going to be creating Bitcoins and lollipops. I want to create art that is thought-provoking, that is conscious, that is challenging, that is confrontational. But every single piece of my work has a philanthropic end to it. So I donate money to charity with every single drop. In my drops this year alone, I've probably donated almost $40,000 to various nonprofits. So through NFTs, we get to change the world and literally put money in the hands of people that are making the world a better place. And the blockchain has made that possible.
I'd love to go back a little bit and understand kind of how we got to this point, but I love the fact that as a creative, you really saw the opportunities that NFTs provided for you to have a vehicle to kind of, spread this and connect the dots relative to, using art for philanthropic purposes and kind of tie it all together. Before we get to that point, you're adept at so many different disciplines. You're traditionally trained in that as well, right? Like you went to school
Yeah, yeah.
for the arts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm classically trained as an actor. I have a BFA in theater from Arizona State University. And so, I've been on stage my entire life. But I remember the first painting I ever created, I was probably in second grade. My mother still has it framed to this day. And I've been writing poetry since I learned how to rhyme: cat, hat, this, that, baseball bat. I love the rhythm of words. And so the arts have always been a part of my genetic code, as it were. And it's interesting that we talk about that. You mentioned, the NFT space, because the only reason I entered the NFT space was because I was aware of. I've been collecting cryptocurrency since late 2017, so the technology was very familiar. But this idea of Spinema, I've been pitching to Hollywood for multiple years. Like, let's get a show off the ground, and this is what it will be. And I was basically, think HBO Def Poetry Jam meets making the video, essentially.
Right.
And unanimously, production companies were like, David, I love it, but we don't know how to sell it. So because Hollywood kept telling me no, I love the word no. Like, tell me no. I'm just going to go left or right. I'm not going to stop moving. Just please tell me no. And so as a result of that, I ended up looking at the NFT space, and I found a platform that allowed for 250 megabytes on the mint. And so now, the technology is evolving, and Break the Bars is now 500 megabytes on chain. So it's going to be a one of one. It is a one of one. And whoever collects this piece will have basically a 2K file at about 13 megabits per second.
Right. And, for some time, there was some handcuffs relative to file size, right? And what people could do. When you had seen that, you talked about having been involved for some time. You were involved in cryptocurrency. When did you get exposure to the NFT space?
It was early 2021. To be quite, it was really like post Beeple. Beeple sort of opened up the floodgates for a lot of people. And I just didn't know how I was going to enter the space, because I needed to figure out how was I going to be identified as an artist, right? Because branding is so much of being an artist. When people collect my art, they're collecting the art for the sake of the art, but they're also collecting into me, the individual, because they believe in my mission statement. They believe in what I'm going to what I am doing for the ecosystem, but also for the world and the better good. So branding is very important as it relates to artists' identity in the space. So I was very cautious on how I was gonna, be introduced to this place. And by the grace of God, I just minted this project, and I ended up getting it to some pretty influential people in the Clubhouse ecosystem, and that sort of mushroomed it from there. And then since then, I've minted on. I just finished a big drop that minted on Super Rare, and now this is my first MakersPlace drop, and I am just beyond the moon on how incredible working with MakersPlace has been. This series here that we're looking at is a project called the Modern Day Minstrel, where it's a portrait series under bed with my spoken word poetry that is myself painted in blackface to uncover the vicious racist history of the minstrel show in America. And each of these NFTs are embellished in After Effects, and beneath them is my original spoken word poetry. So with this series, the folks that collected these, not only did they collect the NFT, I also transferred the intellectual property rights of my written poetry to the owner as well. So the owners of the NFTs also own the IP of the written word, and they can republish, they can sell, they can create derivatives from my language, etc. So really, this one picked up by Canose Ventures and Tony Ho. As I mentioned, Metacoven, Pranksy has acquired some of these works, and some really sophisticated collectors understand, my mission in the NFT space.
Right. I think, obviously that, you get that a lot of people are attracted to the NFT space because it allows some opportunities to have more immersion with their art, right? There's some interesting things you can do with the media itself, as well as with the smart contract. And you were already doing that with film, but now you have some additional layers of interactivity underlining things with, the lyrics themselves, having the audio in conjunction with some unlockables. There's a lot of different things that can work. So I can definitely see how this would be attractive to you as someone that's, embedded in so many different disciplines.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, and I think that the technology is evolving. My mind tells me that the future of NFTs is long form, and this is actually a billboard of my work in Shibuya, Tokyo, from the Super Rare drop. And so it was great just to be, for the NFTs to be sort of featured in this kind of environment with such incredible artists. I mean, a lot of money and, all these great guys. But the technology is getting to the point where we're doing that. So audio visual, long form, I think is really the future of NFTs, at least in my discipline anyways. And how do we make NFTs a little bit more interesting? And the utility of that is part of, as I said, intellectual property, giving folks the ability to use the written word, but also creating soundscapes, visual scapes, and emotional scapes for immersion, because film is an immersive art form.
Right.
And so we use multiple languages, picture, sound, picture, we have picture, sound, and light. I mean, and so when we use those languages, how can I take it to the next level? And I mean, even like yesterday was absolutely mind blowing. Speaking of taking it to the next level, Break the Bars, we did the first ever red carpet world premiere of a film in the metaverse yesterday at the MakersPlace gallery. And the team literally did a facelift on the entire MakersPlace gallery, turned it into a screening room. And we had almost 300 people from all over the world show up. Category 5 was DJing to the first ever red carpet film premiere in the metaverse. So it was amazing. People came in from all over the world. You walked the red carpet. We did a Pope for attendance. The Pope got you obviously the proof of admittance protocol, got you that. And then as soon as you walked into the screening room, the curtains opened up, and then the film played. And so you saw the film, and then immediately after that was a commentary track. And then the Pope machine was in the corner. The DJ was outside. So no matter which room you moved into, the music changed or the film started. It's just fantastic. And every person that came in was able to watch it on their own time. So it's not like a traditional film premiere where if you don't get there at 8 p.m., you miss it. You just get there whenever you want.
Right.
And above and beyond that, Makers loves the work so much, it's actually going to be a permanent installation in their gallery in Decentraland until they do a new architectural facelift. So it's mind-blowing.
Right. What I love about that, and I just had your Instagram up a moment ago for a point, is like, this is not, sometimes you have people that come into the space because they were excited about the opportunity it provides, and they're just trying to kind of leverage the community for their objectives. This is not what this is.
I'm not a cash grab.
Yeah. So you own a punk, right? You have Bored Apes, you have Damien Hirst, you're in Decentraland, literally building something that's unprecedented for a world premiere of a film. So this is someone that's one of us, really embedded in the NFT community, and being integrated in such a way is really cool to see.
Yeah, I'm a real one. I'm a real one because I see the potential, and it's like I can honestly say, brother, that like I have literally I felt like Keanu Reeves in the first Matrix, where he suddenly sees the code for the first time. He sees the Matrix, and the potential for NFTs, media, how we consume media there's no ceiling. And what I experienced in the metaverse yesterday blew my fucking mind. Not only did people have an incredible time, people were blown away by the film and emotionally impacted by the film. We literally created history.
Right.
So many people rallied around the idea of this. And the Pope in and of itself is written in the code of the block. And now for this film, Break the Bars, being the one of one and available for auction as the first ever film to premiere in the metaverse, I think that adds a little bit more provenance to the project as well. I think, and I know, I know that we have the potential as a community to give Hollywood a run for their money, because we have the community, we have the technology, we have the talent, we have the finances. Why can't things release on the blockchain first and then let everybody else see it? Because right now it's theaters first, and then everybody else sees it,
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned Keanu in the Matrix, because I have a young son. He's 8 now, just turned 8. And we try to do movie nights through COVID as kind of an activity that we look forward to. We've run the gamut, right, of some of my favorites, which he doesn't know. Sometimes he obliges, sometimes he doesn't. Like I made him get through the Never Ending Story, but some of my other, 80s callbacks, not so much. We got to the Matrix. he really had no interest in it. And I'm trying to tell him how cool it is, but with his young eyes, to him it looks a little dated or whatever.
It
He
looks
wasn't
dated,
interested. So fast forward a little bit, when I got an Oculus and took him into Decentraland and took him into crypto voxels and explained the concept of the metaverse. Then he's asking me, "Hey, can we watch The Matrix?" Right now, he's interested in it because it made it come full circle for him. What
Immersive.
the experiential, to be able to experience it and what that does for you. So to be able to take film and put it into that realm and give it that much more of a tactile kind of sensation of being there, right? Instead of just on your TV screen and kind of being at an arm's length, you can feel like you're at the premiere. There's other interactive elements, I think, takes it to the next level. So I agree with you. I think at some point we could overtake, the theater delivery method for some of the most desirable, destinations for new films and new projects.
I think I'm so glad that you see the synergy there. And the same sort of methodology that we're talking here in terms of immersion with film and the metaverse was the exact same reason why Spinema as an art form made sense to me. Now, I challenge anybody to scour the internet and find anyone that's producing spoken word films to the degree that I am, because you talked about immersion, right? So me, I've competed in national slams. I've been televised performing spoken word multiple times. But what I saw, even when I watched myself, I was like, watching a poet with a microphone on a stage through a TV screen felt archaic to me. It just really felt archaic. So you see here with this one, I embellish with After Effects to create that sort of infinite stream of tea going on there, as it were. And here,
Right.
in this image, the metaphor is, I don't need help from a white hand, but I have no choice but to accept the infinite help because of the colonialist setup. And hence the watermelons being the things that ground him, and the watermelon that covers his loins, because these are the vicious stereotypes that have been placed upon him. So there's a lot of subtext in that image.
Right.
But as it relates to the thought, is that immersion was my point. So how do I take spoken word and not reinvent it, but just make it better? Make it better, so that if you don't know what spoken word is, you're going to stay because it's visually compelling and it's high art. And if you love spoken word, you're going to stay because you're inside your church, And so to give people a sense of this, I treat Spinema and spoken word films like a theatrical grade film. The script, I break down the script line items, sometimes 20-person crews. We shoot on red cameras, Alexas, anamorphics, steady cams. I use jib arms. I'm using full-size gimbals. I've literally used, $250,000 drones in these projects, and original scores, sound designs. These are very high concept, bespoke, moving canvases that are awakening not only the spiritual and emotional sense of the viewer, but also the social impact and the moral activation of the viewer as well.
Right. And I'd like to just touch on your background a little bit, being, you're multicultural, multi-ethnic, right? So I think that talks to the way our society is evolving, and it's representative of who we are as a culture here in America, and likely the world, as things continue in the path that they're on. You have Italian, Brazilian, African as well, right? You're fluent in multiple languages: Spanish, Portuguese, English. And I just like to give some context for the viewers about the multiculturalism that you're coming from.
Yeah, certainly. And I appreciate you doing the due diligence. I'm Afro-Brazilian and Italian. I am fluent in multiple languages. And the things that are translated through my art are all a direct result of my social conditioning. And that is true for any artist, right? We put on the page what we experience in the world. And I've experienced an incredible amount of racism in my life. I don't want to, I remember, I'm pretty open about this. The first time I was ever called a nigger was in second grade by my principal. And it was in his office. And I didn't realize what that meant because at that point I moved to Mexico City for 5 years, where I learned to speak Spanish. I moved back to upstate New York in my teens. And then I realized what that word meant. I had never heard all these racial slurs. And then suddenly it hit me like a sledgehammer. And so when I came back from Mexico, I wasn't Black enough. I wasn't Latino enough. I was a small English boy, came back with an English accent. So I lived in Mexico City, and all my teachers were from the UK. And I just didn't belong. And so I got bullied a lot, and I ended up turning into a fighter because that's what happens. Because when you get bullied, you either fight back or you just cower and bad things happen. But when you become a fighter, you end up hanging out with the knuckleheads. You don't go to class, you drink 40s and you smoke weed all day.
Right.
And that turned into me getting expelled from 6 high schools. I literally never graduated from high school. All a result of culture clash. All a result of all the chaos of being a teenager, but not knowing where I fit in and not knowing where I belonged and so on and so forth. So for a guy like me who never graduated from high school, got my GED in the local strip mall. And then, I was a rave promoter for 9 years, and that's how I learned production, because you turn a warehouse into a concert, essentially, sound, lights, crew, delegation, street teams, all that. I learned how to produce film by producing raves. And so moving forward, I ended up getting into a community college on academic probation, blah, blah, blah. And then I got into Arizona State University, and I graduated summa cum laude, top of my class, from a guy with a GED at the local strip mall. But I had to go through a lot of shit to get me where I wanted to go, and so all these things that I've experienced in my life are these, I should say, the underlying cause of my art. I have come to believe that any human being that sees or witnesses injustice has a moral obligation to act. And whatever that means for that person is whatever that means for that person. It could be a march. It could be share a tweet. You could share an Instagram post. You could write a letter to your senator, whatever that is. But if you don't act when you witness injustice, you create a resentment towards yourself. Resentment means to ressentir, from the Latin root of the word, to refeel. And the last thing you want to do is refeel a resentment against yourself, because then you're fighting with yourself and all you hear is your own voice, right? So when we step into progress for humanity, we then get to stack our self-esteem with a higher estimation of self. So what I do in the art world is rooted in that, in the idea of creating a better self-estimation for myself, but also following in the footsteps of my ancestors. Because my lineage is from Bahia, Brazil. And that was the largest port of the slave trade in all of the Americas. 5 million slaves were brought to North America. 20 million were brought to Brazil. And I've seen those shackles that still exist today in the capital. And so I want to be the best ancestor that I can be today, but I also want to be the best artist and the best member of society that I can be today. I want to be a part of the human experience that creates real impact. And that's why I live the way that I do. And for whatever it's worth, everything that's good in my life is also a direct result of my sobriety. I'm almost 5 years sober, and I'm open about that, because everything that I do is God driven, And so I always think to myself, and my mentors tell me, David, we focus on the work. God focuses on the results. So we deliver work to the best of our ability, and then God takes care of the results.
Wow. I mean, thank you for sharing all of that. It definitely helps connect, your inspiration and your drive for your philanthropic efforts. I think that I read that your purpose really in the NFT space is to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for a myriad of nonprofits. And that's really the objective here. And it's great to see that with the success of your first one and the accolades that it got, you've just progressed, and it looks like continue to add even more resources, looking at the progression of films that you did release on the blockchain. This latest seems, incredible. I think that you likely put even more into this than you had, and you'll continue to do that moving forward as you build to more and more, obtaining more and more funding for these organizations that do wonderful things around the world.
Well, you're absolutely right. And listen, there's the old fable, like, what do they say on the airplanes, right? You got to put a mask on yourself before you take care of your children. And one of the things that the NFT space has afforded me is the ability to be a self-sustaining artist. So I do a lot of TV and film, as you guys saw. But when I go on a TV set, I'm reading their lines, I'm playing for their cameras. There's no personal inspiration involved in that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm blessed and honored to be able to earn money in that way and have such a cool job. But when I do this, fuck me, my heart beats. Like, it makes you want to get out of bed on Monday. Like, I got work to do. We've got change to put into this world, and not only am I working with nonprofits, part of my rationale with these nonprofits is I want to give you thousands of dollars from this drop that I work so hard on, but I'm only going to give it to you if you open up a digital wallet. I'm not going to give you fiat. I'm not doing it. So I want to not only give ETH to nonprofits, but I also want to onboard nonprofits into the value of cryptocurrency. So we can start
Right.
onboarding 501c3s, because it's not just enough to give away money. You got to give away money with purpose. And I also work intimately with nonprofits who I feel connected to. And I know that those dollars are going to be, I should say, that ETH, as it were, will be well spent. And yeah.
Yeah, I also saw that you referenced, wanting to educate minority communities on the value of the blockchain and having them be able to use the empowerment that it provides to, better their situation in themselves. There's lots of creatives that don't have access to the same resources, whether it be an iPad with Procreate or even an understanding of how they could leverage it. And it's such a powerful tool right now that can change people's lives.
It absolutely is. And I mean, whether it's crypto or whether it's NFT art, this is the kind of stuff that can literally change third world countries and make the entire financial ecosystem go pear-shaped, which is why the institutions are so, up in arms about it and bitching about what they think crypto is, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
But the thing is, it's like, this is the biggest revolution, I think, in humankind, in modern humankind, right? To me, this is almost as important as the wheel, in terms of what it's doing for global impact, artistic impact, residual passive income, and self-sustaining potential for the artist. NFTs being an asset class. There's going to be a day where you're going to sit in a court. You can see two people in a courtroom arguing about community property over who fucking owns the CryptoPunk.
Right, yeah.
It's like, this is very real. And the fact that these are assets, I can pass these on to generations to come if I put them in my will and testament, theoretically, right? And so we are changing everything. This is an artistic renaissance. This is a financial renaissance. And we are so early. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this movement right now. Because you and I, Nightmare, and everybody listening to this, we're literally changing the world, literally one Satoshi at a time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk a little bit about the specifics of Break the Bars, your inspiration for this particular piece, and then how you've parsed it up for people to participate with the MakersPlace drop.
Absolutely. So Break the Bars is a piece that really, the call to action on this one is that we have to do better for our inner city kids that are being raised in the concrete jungle. So when I first moved to Hollywood with a summa cum laude from Arizona State University with a theater degree, I was convinced Hollywood was waiting for me. Here we come. Bullshit. They weren't waiting for me. I was a waiter for over 10 years. I was a bartender for a decade and a half. And my first apartment, I lived with cockroaches in the kitchen. I had a torn leather couch and like no AC, you know what I mean, in Sunset and Gower. And I remember walking around Hollywood and seeing every window had bars on it. And I just started to pay attention to it. And then I came out of my building one day and I saw the children in the back parking lot playing handball against the dumpster. And it broke my heart. And at the time, I was just, rocking the open mic scene. So some actors have stand-up comedy, some actors have groundlings and improv. For me, it was the open mic as a poet. That was where I felt alive. That was where I could free myself of the bondage of being stiffed at a table, for being a waiter and a bartender. I could be creative. I could be free. So I knew I had an audience. So I wrote this idea, Break the Bars. Let's break the bars. Her 10-year-old eyes base their reality on the view of the neighborhood through the bars on her window. The bars on her window, like the bars on her father's window, except his are surrounded by concrete. And it's been never since their eyes did meet. And so the idea here is, what does this do to the psyche of children from a claustrophobia perspective, from an enclosing perspective? The idea that we are raised with the notion of imprisonment. Are we protecting ourselves, or are we protecting ourselves from them, or are they protecting themselves from us, right? So that was the inspiration. And then I brought in my buddy, Chris Wood, who I was doing a lot of slams with at the time, and he agreed to do a team piece. And so we ran it around a bunch of open mics. And then eventually it ended up becoming what it is now, which is the film that you will all see, Break the Bars. And, we shot everything here in a day. I directed it. I had a very concise vision of what I wanted to do. There's a lot of nuances in the film, and a lot of great visual nuances in the film. And it's a really powerful piece of work that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, you know what? With that, I'd love to show it real quick for everyone to
Sure.
see, and then we can come back. We can talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll talk about the mechanics and all that. Thank you.
When I get older, I want to live in a nice house, like the ones you see on TV, where everyone has a dog and everyone is happy all the time. A house with birds and lots of sun. I want a happy house with friends that look like me. Break the bars.
Her 10-year-old eye.
Her 10-year-old eyes.
Her 10-year-old eyes.
Her 10-year-old eyes.
Sarah's 10-year-old eyes base their reality on the view of the neighborhood through the bars on her window. The bars on her window, like the bars on her father's window. Except his are surrounded by concrete. And it's been never since their eyes did meet. So she walks the neighborhood with her friends, but she has to be careful of the 15-year-old Tony who always tries to get her to come behind the liquor store because he's got something to show her.
Yo, I'm saying, yo, check this out.
She knows never to go beyond the bars of the fence with him. And her 10-year-old eyes base their reality on the view of the neighborhood through the bars on her window. But her mind soars beyond the clouds into the universe of manifestation. Break the bars, the land where she can sing like Lauryn Hill. Break the bars, the land where the cupboards are always full. Break the bars, the land where the pops in the streets are only fireworks. Break the bars, because her mind bends those bars. Because there exists a place where she can play in the street. A place where the 15-year-old Tony only wants to hold her hand. A place where her father can hug her.
Break the bars, a luminescent place of non-subjective but factual, actual, palpable beauty that rings songs of rockabye, baby, and rubber ducky. With unconditional loves and licks and a soft kiss from a cocker spaniel puppy, where fields grow far and dandelions meet the horizon and a matrimony made in heaven, where the only steel that exists isn't a tool or a gat or any form of a weapon. It comes in the form of a hoe. And it comes in the form of a rake. And it comes in the form of oven pan where mom and dad make shake and bake. And the only crack that she sees is in the sidewalk chalk that talks of yellows and blues and warm attitudes and faithful sense of crunchy peanut butter and jelly afternoons. Yo, tomato soup spoons and Saturday morning cartoons and big kites that take flight and bathe in the warm sunlight and the soft moon to kiss her face goodnight. And the only Tony that Sarah knows
is a tiger.
So break the bars that I can't cross the streets with too many fast cars. Break the bars where children play on concrete because urban sprawl cut the grass with tar. Break the bars where crack cocaine conquers and eventually Sarah's scarred. Break the what? Break the bars. Break the what? Break the bars.
Where kids are addicted to fast food, clogging their arteries with lard.
Where alcoholism affects children, domestic abuse cuts like glass shards.
Where humans have no empathy, only sympathy, and call the mentally challenged
retard. And the lack of educational funding leaves a generation permanently marred.
Where she'll twist them, invade the system, and breed 4 kids for a welfare card.
Where my front door, back door, and all my windows are permanently barred.
Where our jail-like communities enclose our bodies, leaving our minds jarred.
And the back alley dumps is our children's play yard.
Where our offspring's too tough, cop guns, pop ones
just to be hard. And the life cycles, reciprocals won't get them far. Around bars, aside bars, behind bars, break the bars.
And her 10-year-old eyes base their reality on the view of the neighborhood
through the bars on her window. Where fields flow far and dandelions meet the horizon.
And a matrimony made in heaven.
Where the only steel that exists isn't a tool or a gat or any form of weapon. Around bars, aside bars, behind bars, break the bars.
Wow.
Thanks, man.
I love the. I just have to let that marinate a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Let it sit in.
I love the ferocity that you delivered it. I love the authenticity. You can just tell it's coming from a place, you know, that's real. And you know, as a person that experienced that, you know, growing up, like that was my reality. And I'm fortunate to be one of the people that was able to get out. Like it hits hard. Like it really conveyed that emotional struggle of feeling like, you know, you're entrapped, really.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you thank you, and I'm so grateful to hear that from your heart. Like that's your heart speaking, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the mechanics while I let
Yeah,
myself get
yeah,
collected here.
sure,
So this is
sure.
dropping on Maker's Place today.
Yeah, so this is dropping on MakersPlace today. That film is a one of one. So as I mentioned, it's a 500 megabyte file. So anybody that owns this piece will own basically the NFT of the film in its entirety. There are also limited edition assets that are part of the drop, and so you'll see Power of Voice, Sarah's Playground, and then there's one more, which is called Her Mind Soars Beyond the Clouds. So what we did was I chose 3 select stills from the film and then embellished them in After Effects to create camera moves within them, and then use the superimposition of the lyric over the image, and beneath it is the soundscape of the film. So feel free to play one of them, whichever one you see fit, to give the audience a sense of what these are. And these are limited edition ones of fours. If you probably go to my landing, to my actual page, you'll get there you go. You can click on one of those.
Break the bars, and her 10-year-old eyes base their reality on the view of the neighborhood through the bars on her window, where fields flow far and dandelions meet the horizon. And a matrimony made in heaven, where the only skill that exists is on a tool or a gat or any form of weapon. Around bars, beside bars, behind bars, break the bars.
So essentially, though, so that's really, for the most part, the mechanics of these limited editions, these ones of fours. And so the idea is to be able to offer this idea of social impact to more than just the white glove collector, because obviously not everybody is a whale, right?
Right.
So how can we allow the blue collar collector to have access to this social impact? Because to invest in a Bianchi piece is obviously to invest in a Bianchi piece, but you're also investing in social impact. You're being a part of the solution because of the donation process that I go through. So you can know that and rest easy. So these, I'm actually going to offer these very affordably for 0.4 ETH. These are all
Okay.
ones of fours. And beneath that, there's going to be an additional, which is going to be an additional open edition, which is basically an augmented reality poster. And if you go to the drop page, you'll be able to see that. All right, let's see, you scrub down and you'll be able to see it right at the bottom. And so I'm not sure how their system is working, because hopefully it opens it up and you can see it in the
When I get older, I want to live in a nice house, like the ones you see on TV, where everyone has a dog and everyone is happy all the time. A house with birds and lots of sun. I want a happy house with friends that look like me.
So that's a really beautifully sort of augmented, almost like an AR sort of vibe on a movie poster. And those, I want those are very community level. I'm offering those for basically 0.08. I'm like, look, let's give everybody access to this drop, right?
Right.
Let's let the whales do what the whales do, and then let's have the community be able to have access to these. I thought 0.08, because that's like mint price. Everybody knows 0.08, right? Mint price. And
R-
even if you're paying with fiat, $250 doesn't really affect anybody's wallet in a major way. So for me, that's really, really important. Another component to this is anyone who acquires any limited edition from this drop will automatically be placed into a raffle for a never released one of one from Break the Bars that will not be available for sale. It will be airdropped to one lucky owner. So adding a little bit of gamification to it, if you will. I'm really, really excited about this drop, and I'm really, really excited about this collaboration with Makers. I mean, it's really, really a blessing.
Yeah, it's all come together really beautifully from, your work as well as what they've put together, and even the headlines that were grabbed by having the first world premiere, right, in Decentraland, and from all reports in on Twitter, which there were many showing off their red carpet
Yeah.
stances and their outfits. It was a big success, and a couple comments in our community, people are saying it's ironic he's literally spitting bars in the project about break the bars, possibly intentionally there.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that, and listen, I love talking to people in this way because I don't take myself that seriously, but I do take my work very seriously. I understand the weight that I carry when I choose to talk about socially conscious stuff and create this kind of work. I have to comport myself in a certain kind of way. But I loved what happened yesterday. That really opened up the floodgates of my ideas for what I'm already thinking into 2023 at this point, to be quite honest. Um, there's no limit in what we're doing here, and I'm so grateful to be connected to you. We'll be collaborators, I'm certain, in various ways moving forward. And I just want to really just inspire people and inspire other poets and inspire other filmmakers to come behind me and say, wow, okay, David's doing it, we can do this too. Because the technology is there, you know and
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I'm a big fan of your work already, and I dabble in a little poetry myself, so we'd be glad to share some stuff with you and just get your feedback as well. How
I
was the
I love that.
reception? Yeah, how was the reception been to your work, both within the NFT community and outside of it in traditional Hollywood?
Look, it's been great. I mean, look, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, they've all covered my independent poetic work and my independent film work. So, I mean, these projects have won film festivals. My second Spinema piece played the Cannes Film Festival. So these projects are really, really embraced in a very big way in the traditional world. But I will say this: the NFT community has a series of characteristics. One, tech savvy. Two, mostly under the age of 45. Three, sophisticated. Four, mostly college educated. And five, hungry for high art. And they understand high art in a way that the normies don't.
Right.
So the fact that it's blowing up in this space now in hindsight makes perfect sense. But in the beginning, I just didn't know. But I'm so honored that, guys like you who you see the value and the sort of the white glove nature of the work that I create. And the experimental nature of it is I guess exalted much more in the crypto art community than it has ever been in the physical world. Because like I said, I spent 18 years of my life producing these films in the physical world, and I did not have this kind of success. So that just goes to show how big the hearts are in the NFT space and how much people in the crypto art world want to step up for social cause. And I don't think that there's many. I haven't found any other artists in the ecosystem that are doing what I'm doing. Um,
Sir,
but I've
yeah,
not seen
sir.
everything.
Certainly not to the degree of exposure or fine detail and production value that you're putting into it. I mean, you're coming from a whole different a world and kind of merging Hollywood with what the capabilities are of the NFT space. So it's an incredible product for sure. You touched on the NFT community as a whole, and I know that you're a big advocate and active on Clubhouse and the Clubhouse community.
Mhm.
Any words on how Clubhouse has helped you enable you to kind of get to where you're at right now in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, if it weren't for Clubhouse, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I didn't know where to go when I minted my first NFT, which was I Can't Breathe. I literally knew no one in the NFT space. All I heard was Clubhouse. So I went on Clubhouse and I went on like NFTs.tips, and those guys were incredible. Like they just answered every silly question that I had. And then there it is. And then yeah, it's actually on Ephemera is the one of one. Um, and that those guys just answered so many questions for me. And then Paulo Moreno and Farouk, Jay Rosenzweig, and God bless his heart, Wolf Lion. In fact, speaking of Jin, I'm donating a portion of the proceeds from the drop from Break the Bars to Jin's legacy as well, because if it weren't for Jin, I wouldn't have been connected to Aisha at MakersPlace. And so if it weren't for Clubhouse, I wouldn't be here. Now, I think that there's a big transition in terms of the voice technology. Now it's sort of moving from sort of like Clubhouse to Twitter Spaces to Discord conversations. But the idea is the power of the voice, right? The power of the voice from my lungs, that is the afterthought of people's experience through the voice of my art. Right.
Right.
I had a conversation with my dear friend Veritas, head curator at the Metaverse, and he told me when he acquired I Can't Breathe, he says, David, I saw the work. He's like, and I was mesmerized by it. I was blown away by it. He's like, but when I heard you on Clubhouse and I understood you as a human being, that was part of what really concreted the idea for me that I wanted to acquire your work, because I heard your heart. And that's one of the most important things, I think, for anyone who is creating socially conscious work is your heart in the right place? Is your heart in the right place? Because if it is, then people will want to be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think to your point, not only does your heart have to be in the right place, but you have to be able to put yourself out there and let people know and see it, because some people have the best intentions, but they're not as accessible, and that's fine. Some people use that, that's part of their art to kind of be, have a mystique about them. But people buy the artist and the narrative and what people represent, and their heart, if they wear it on their sleeve, as much as they do the execution of the art itself. So I think when you can have both, especially when you're trying to convey a message, it's really the best of both worlds, and a great way forward for artists.
And you're absolutely right, and I appreciate that. And part of me being an actor, it makes me sort of uniquely qualified to be able to do exactly what you talked about. I've spent my entire life being vulnerable in front of people. That's part of what I do. My job is to be emotionally naked. I can't turn text into a moving, palpable performance that the audience can feel a catharsis from unless I'm willing to be emotionally naked. And even if you look at Spinema, for example, I would rather have a great actor that I could turn into a poet than a poet that I'm trying to turn into an actor, right? Just because you're a good poet doesn't mean you can do Spinema, because you have to understand the nuances of a camera, right? And when you talk about being vulnerable, that's really, really important. And that's why I tell stories about being expelled from 6 schools. I tell stories about living with cockroaches, because that's my life. I want to be transparent. I want people to know me, because I also want people to be able to have a Me Too moment, because that's really what this is about, right? We're sharing the human condition. And if I'm not willing to be vulnerable, why would anybody give themselves permission to do the same? On
Right.
the other side of that, there's also the sharper side of the sword, which is the public scrutiny, right? Because I'm not hiding behind an avatar.
Right.
People, like, I've gotten threats on my life on Twitter because of the Modern Day Minstrel drop, and because of some of my work, and you're profiting off trauma porn, and and people are entitled to their opinion, but
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, because there's a fine line, and maybe you have to do a little bit of both to try to be effective. But to turn heads and get attention from people that wouldn't normally look at something, you have to make them uncomfortable sometimes, right? And certainly you did that with some of your work. But I also saw, in a piece that you had spoken about other works where you tried to approach it differently and not convey anger and not convey frustration, but instead do something that was more relatable, like being brokenhearted and things of that nature. How do you find yourself able to balance that, or what's your take on it and how you approach your work?
Well, I think that it's a really good question. I think that anything that you're talking about, be it any sort of social commentary, is going to be polarizing, right? There's always going to be 2 sides of the aisle, and you're never going to make anybody happy. Everybody happy, I should say. My approach to most of my work as it relates to Spinema is storytelling. I really, really try to avoid giving you opinion, right? Or conjecture, as it were, telling you what you should do. No, I try not to do that. I just want to be able to tell a story. Like with Break the Bars, I'm telling a story about a girl's environment, and I'm showing you her environment. What you choose to do with that information is whatever your heart allows you to do. Right. With I Can't Breathe, it was literally a soliloquy of a man's pain speaking into the void. Again, I wasn't telling you to fire the president or to, march on Congress or whatever. It was just the realities of being Black in America. And so when I focus on a storytelling perspective, I think it really allows the viewer to do what they will with it. And then on the visual perspective, I have to really walk the fine line of what is cinema and what can be perceived as camp. I'm not a campy guy at all. None of my work is camp. I like to consider myself a pretty sophisticated artist, and I'm very, 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 very specific on making sure that my art comes across as bespoke, well thought out, but also respective and showing the utmost respect for the topics of which I'm discussing. You know, it's really important to me. I want to, with cinema, the simple answer is I want to create performances that the actors will respect. I want to create poetry that the poets will respect. And I want to produce films that filmmakers will respect. And those are 3 big shoes to fill, and package them all into 5 minutes to fit on the blockchain. So,
Right.
you know, but I've gotten good at it over the course of 2 decades.
Yeah, I think potency is the key word there, right? So the 5 minutes is very impactful and resonates afterwards. So it goes far beyond its runtime, definitely.
Yeah.
We're up against the hour, so I'd love if you have a couple minutes just to take some questions from the community that they've sent in and wanted me to relay to you.
It would be my honor.
One of them, someone asked, besides Philly Brown, do you have any musical background? Have you created any music?
Yeah, well, Philly Brown was actually a Sundance smash that made Gina Rodriguez a star.
Right.
And I wrote a large portion of the spoken word that's in that film. The answer is yes, I have. I've dropped a couple hip hop tracks. I've directed a music video for a piece that I wrote called "Change the World," which eventually will hit the blockchain. I love the platform One of what they're doing on the Tezos chain. And I'm having conversations with them about potentially dropping some music. I retract sober thoughts when I relapse in my raps, and be that Tom's signature, hustle tactics. I don't give a shit of who's the hottest, who's the baddest. I eat meat on flesh beats, carnivorous raps for me. Yo, gristle tweaks, hi-hat, spit out the teeth. The struggle's universal, down low or high rise. Get caught up with the knuckle, see beyond that with your third eye. Conflict resolution, maximum or minimum. I'm smart and not hard to let the next nigga finish them. I keep it pushing to the pace of evolution. Survival of the fittest is the noodles that you're using. I try to keep it focused, don't emulate hocus pocus. While y'all trying to get your ego on, I'm praying for the hopeless.
Dope. Great question. Thank you to whomever had sent that in. we got a little free top of the dome right there. Another question. What is your advice for people who want to make a difference and make an impact within the community but don't have the resources of a whale?
Well, let me tell you this. Very few whales were born whales unless there's a thing called nepotism, which we'll just put all that aside, right? You know, look, man, I'm a guy who moved to LA with, you know, a couple suitcases and a computer in my car. My first apartment was in Silver Lake. I had an air mattress and I slept on the floor. I used to bunch up my clothes in a ball and put on 3 shirts at night because I couldn't afford a blanket, and I slept like this. And I was a waiter. And, you know, man, every single day I had a knowing this is what I want to do. I invite any artist, I invite any philanthropist, any entrepreneur, any potential business owner, that this has got to be your methodology. You need to attack the island and burn the boat. There is nothing behind you that is serving you. You have I have a past full of resentments and I have a future full of insecurities. I am here right now and I am focused on the purpose. So I want to give you that first to answer your question. Because serving the community is just being of service. That could be as simple as helping an elderly person across the street with their groceries. It doesn't necessarily have to be en masse of $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. But what you can do in the NFT space is be vulnerable, put your mission out there, like attach your art to your mission so that you build a community in the NFT space so that people believe in your mission, invest in your art, and then you can use that to create impact. You know, what is the old phrase? You know, build it and they will come. Also, don't be afraid to have your back up against the wall. I tend to work best when my back's up against the wall. Like I went into this world premiere in the metaverse having no idea how I was going to do it.
Right.
I was like, yo, we're going to go. Let's go. I'm attacking the island. I'm burning the boat. I cannot fail. Failure is not an option. I refuse to fail. I refuse to fail for my art. I refuse to fail for the metaverse. All the people that trusted my vision. I lose sleep at night if I don't show up for MakersPlace, if I don't show up for Decentraland, if I don't show up for the metaverse, if I don't show up for the NFT community, you know? And that's got to come from inside you, my brother or sister. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I'll leave you with this. Art, media, films, social impact, whatever it is that you envision, that doesn't start with money. That starts with inspiration, right? Look at Gary Vee. And that starts with inspiration. How do I get a movie made? I get a movie made because I'm inspired to write a script. I take that script into a room and I pitch it to guys with money. They believe my pitch. They give me money. I make the movie. Movies aren't made with money. Movies are made with inspiration. Art is made with inspiration. And we don't pay an artist for their labor. We pay an artist for their vision, right? Let that one sink in.
Love it. Love it. On the topic of community, someone asks, what are your thoughts on the NFT space and inclusivity?
It's an important question. The reality of it is that the NFT community is largely populated by Caucasian men. I will say that I'm grateful for those Caucasian men because they are mostly progressive and inclusive and interested in opening the door for women, people of color, people with disabilities, people from foreign countries, people that whose language isn't English for the first language if you're in the Western world, for example. As it relates to finance and technology, minorities are oftentimes the last people to the table. So that's why my work, I feel, is so incredibly important. Like with getting, cryptocurrency in the inner cities of Minneapolis, creating work that focuses on BIPOC people, so I can inspire other folks to say, look what Dave is doing. We can do this too. So I think that the availability and the doors are wide open for minorities and women, or whether you're LGBTQ, whatever your sexual orientation is, your religious orientation, the doors are wide open. Everybody in the NFT community is here to offer you an olive branch if you're willing to ask for it. My mother used to tell me, son, quiet mouths don't get fed. Nobody knows you're hungry unless you say you're hungry, right? And there's more strength in vulnerability than there is in self-righteousness. In other words, if I feel I have all the answers, that's all I'm going to be left with, is a feeling of knowing all the answers. But if I'm willing to be vulnerable and ask a question, say, hey, I need some help, I don't know the answer, I promise you the NFT community will give it right back to you, because that's been my experience. And so I work very hard to each one teach one and give the information back that was freely given to me.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is definitely a positive a lot of people touch on with regards to the NFT space is, it's a lot of people trying to help each other succeed, right? It's not, whereas a lot of different art scenes or business scenes or whatever, there's a lot of trying to step on each other's back to move forward. And here it's not necessarily the case, right? Here it's a lot of people saying, hey, this is just emerging. We're at the forefront of this and we're trying to lead the charge, but there's a lot of room to grow. So let's do it together. So
Agreed.
And there's amazing untapped artists that you'll help onboard and bring in. And I look forward to seeing, those people and their works.
I mean, I'm already on the board of advisors for a new platform that's going to be opening on the Flow chain called Disrupt Now. I'm going to be onboarding BIPOC artists, and so that's going to be coming soon. And obviously, super rare spaces. Like, I'm so excited about that. Like, I'm telling you, man, I am so in. Like, I couldn't run out, man, if I wanted to. Like,
right. Well, and in that vein, someone actually asked, they're like, he seems to have a finger on the pulse. Ask him what his favorite NFT projects are right now.
Oh man,
that's a tough one. I don't blame you if you say I can't do that.
Yeah. Look, not financial advice. Not financial advice. So I guess the question is, what stage of project, right? Because there's newer projects, and then there's the old granddads, as it were. I mean, look, I'm an ape maximalist. Obviously I love what Larva Labs does. I really, really love what Art Blocks does. I think that there's a big movement in generative art. I have this really cool project called Audio Glyphs. I love those. They're, infinite audio streams that never replicate themselves. Super cool, super affordable. I love WOWs. I love the World of Women. I think they're super dope. I love the Oni Force. So there's a lot of cool. I love, we love the cats. Those cats are dope. The cool cats. And, in the fine art space, I mean, there's so many, Miss Al Simpson is super dope. I really love what Pranksy does in the space. Pranksy is someone I tend to pay attention to. There's so much out there, you can't pay attention to it all.
Right.
It's so yeah.
And in the same vein, they asked, what are of your acting projects, what would be some of your favorites that you've completed?
You know, I did a big recur on a show called Queen of the South, which was really fun. But I think one of the more pivotal moments in my life was when I was on Westworld, and that was really game changing for me. And a funny story about that. So I was 45 days sober going into that show. I was shaking like a leaf, and I found out, and I booked the job, but I didn't know what I was doing. And then I found out the day of, when I showed up to set in wardrobe and costume, I didn't even know what my scene was, because they were like, "We love David, but we're not going to hire him for this thing. We want to give him something else." Okay, cool. Westworld, holy shit, HBO. Jonah Nolan, Christopher Nolan's brother. So I show up on set, and then the wardrobe person tells me that I'm in a scene with Anthony Hopkins and Jeffrey Wright. Excuse me?
Right.
And so for days I was on set, and they kept pushing it back. I mean, the anxiety was really, really high, but I was able to I literally stalked Tony Hopkins outside of the lunchroom, because I needed to have some FaceTime with him before I stepped on set. I just wanted to say hello, just to try to kill the nerves. And I beelined him, and he was with his assistant, and I said, "Hey, Mr. Hopkins." I said, "Hi, my name's David Bianchi." He said, "Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. But by the way, just call me Tony." Okay, Tony. So we're going to be doing a scene. "Oh, tell me about the scene we're about to do together." "Oh, it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful." Very, very kind, very, very warm, very welcome. And he's walking away. And then I said to him, I said, "Tony," I'm like 45 days sober. Now I say this because, he's a big supporter of that. He looks at me and says, "Well, let's talk about that for a minute. How are you doing?" And what would have been just a casual one-on-one conversation turned into a spiritual connection with a man. And we ended up having literally a 300-meter stroll to his trailer, and we became friends through a God connection. And that was one of the most pivotal moments from my life, where I realized that, okay, God, you've given me the answer. If I continue to live this life of higher purpose, of higher focus, and removing and relieving myself of the bondage of myself, and getting out of my own way and living a life free of alcohol and drugs, I can achieve anything I want. Done. And since then, I fight every single day to live this life. And as a result of that, we're having this conversation. This is all a direct result of my sobriety.
Beautiful thing. And a testament to your fortitude to push through all that you've pushed through, and then, channel that into your art and use it as something that could be a force of positivity in the world. So thank you so much for doing that and sharing so much of yourself with us and all that you do. And it looks like all that you will definitely continue to do in this space. You are going to be a force to be reckoned with.
I'm grateful.
So just to remind everybody, the drop goes live later this afternoon. Break the Bars on MakersPlace. We will drop the links in the Discord so that you guys could follow. There will be an exclusive one-on-one of the film, some limited editions that have some pieces of it as well. All this going to wonderful charitable causes that David curates. And likewise, there is an open edition, so anybody from any walk of life can feel free to join in and participate. And if you can't, there's other ways. Continue to support David, or take up your own efforts to do something philanthropic and help your community, and just be vulnerable and be yourself. And thank you for all that enlightenment, David. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today.
The pleasure's been all mine. And again, thank you, Aisha, and everybody at the leadership executive level at MakersPlace. Thank you, Whale community, for being you, for doing you, and allowing me to have a moment of your time. I appreciate it deeply.
Excellent. Look forward to a wonderful drop, and I'm sure what will be a sellout. I'm going to get my ETH ready to grab one of these editions.
Oh man, you're far too generous. Thank you, my bro.
Have a good one, David.